Charleston's night pressed thick against the mansion's glass, cicadas screaming in the heat, jasmine's scent curling through velvet curtains. Inside, billionaire Ethan Caldwell lay stretched across his leather sofa, body loose as if claimed by sleep. Only he wasn't asleep. Every nerve in him was awake, waiting, testing. Across the room, an old mahogany safe gaped open, spilling stacks of $100 bills like a wound that wouldn't close. $3 million stolen by his partner had taught Ethan that trust was poison, and tonight even innocence would be put on trial. The hinges whispered. Nia Okoye stepped in, careful as always, mop bucket in hand, her daughter Amara clutching her palm. 6 years old, tiny gloves too big for her wrists. The girl blinked at the mountain of cash as if it were treasure stolen from heaven. Ethan slowed his breathing, forcing his chest to rise and fall in perfect rhythm. He'd spent weeks planning this test. If a child's heart could resist greed, maybe hope still existed. Nia turned her back to scrub the shelves. Amara's feet shifted. She drifted closer to the open safe, each step an echo. Ethan could hear the whisper of her gloves brushing wood, the small intake of breath when she saw the money up close. His pulse slammed hard in his throat. Would she reach out? Would she slip a bill into her pocket? The silence swelled until it became unbearable, the humid air a noose around his lungs. Then Amara tilted her head, eyes glinting with a thought so unexpected it froze him where he lay. What she does next will not only test his faith, it will shatter everything he thought he knew about truth, loyalty, and the price of innocence. Charleston's dawn arrived, wrapped in a silver haze, the mist rolling off the marshes like a veil that softened the edges of the old city. The cobblestone streets glistened faintly from the humidity of the night, and horse-drawn carriages creaked into motion as though the past refused to surrender to time. Within this historic beauty stood Ethan Caldwell's headquarters, a steel and glass tower that seemed to pierce the skyline with quiet arrogance. Inside its walls, the life of a billionaire unfolded with precision. But for all its brilliance, Ethan himself remained haunted by doubts money could never silence. At 45, Ethan had built a reputation as one of the country's leading tech moguls, reserved in demeanor yet kind in action. He lived behind a careful facade, his piercing blue eyes rarely betraying the storms he carried inside. Years of betrayal, culminating in a recent theft of $3 million by someone he once called brother, had shaped his outlook, turning trust into a fragile commodity. The mansion he returned to each evening echoed with luxury, yet loneliness walked its halls. Wealth brought him comfort, but it stripped away certainty. And so Ethan devised tests, not of technology or strategy, but of people. Among those who stepped into his world each evening was Nia Okoye, a 28-year-old Nigerian immigrant who carried resilience in her posture and dignity in her silence. Life had given her more hardship than kindness, yet she met every obstacle with determination. As a single mother, she bore responsibilities far heavier than most her age, yet never allowed despair to carve lines on her youthful face. Her dark eyes carried warmth, her hands carried strength, and her voice, though soft, held authority whenever she spoke to her daughter. Amara, at 6 years old, was the heartbeat of her mother's existence. Bright, curious, and endlessly observant, she followed Nia during school holidays, often slipping into her mother's night shift routine with wonder rather than complaint. She wore little blue gloves whenever she joined her mother at work, a habit Nia had taught her early, a symbol of care and responsibility. Those gloves, slightly oversized for her tiny wrists, made her appear as though she was playing dress-up in the world of adults, though the seriousness with which she wore them reminded Ethan of innocence shaped by discipline. For 2 years, Nia had worked the night shift at Caldwell Innovations, the tech empire Ethan built from scratch. While the city slept, she moved silently through the empty halls, dusting screens, polishing floors, and ensuring the offices sparkled for the next day. To her, it was honest labor, a means to provide for Amara while still holding on to her dream of finishing her business degree one day. To Ethan, watching from a distance through the security system, it was an intriguing display of quiet loyalty. On this particular night, however, something different unfolded. Ethan's study, nestled within the upper floor of his mansion, had been staged with a purpose. The antique safe, its brass handle polished to a shine, its door swung wide, was left deliberately open. Inside, stacks of currency filled the dark interior, arranged with almost theatrical precision. The test was simple yet profound. Leave temptation exposed, feign sleep, and watch what innocence would choose when confronted with opportunity. Nia entered as she always did, her expression neutral, her movements methodical. She set her cleaning supplies down carefully, her gaze sweeping across the room with the practiced eye of someone who had memorized every corner. To her, the safe was no more than a piece of furniture, another object to dust, another corner to avoid while working. She had no idea her employer was silently observing, his breathing steady, his body posed in perfect stillness as though sleep had claimed him. Amara, however, noticed. The girl's eyes widened the instant she spotted the open door, and the glimmering rose inside. Curiosity flickered across her face like a lantern's flame in the dark. She tugged lightly at her gloves, as if the fabric somehow anchored her from drifting too close. Ethan, though pretending to sleep, felt his chest tighten. Every muscle in his body strained to remain still, though his mind screamed with anticipation. This was the heart of his experiment. The setting outside mirrored the tension indoors. Beyond the mansion's expansive windows, Charleston's marshes exhaled their mist into the night, weaving ghostly shapes among the reeds. The cobblestone streets of the city, visible from a distance, glistened beneath the glow of gas lamps, their uneven surfaces telling stories of centuries past. The blend of history and present, beauty and decay, formed the perfect stage for a test of morality. Here, in this city that thrived on its contrasts, Ethan sought clarity. Nia hummed softly as she worked, a Nigerian lullaby she often sang to soothe Amara when she was restless. The sound filled the room with gentle rhythm, masking the crackling silence that hung over the open safe. She moved with diligence, scrubbing away invisible dust, polishing wood until it gleamed. To her, the mansion was simply a workplace. To Ethan, her devotion was both admirable and puzzling. She had no reason to display such integrity to a man who barely acknowledged her presence beyond polite instructions. Yet night after night she proved reliable. Amara inched closer to the safe, each step slow, deliberate. Her small fingers curled into fists inside the gloves, as if to resist the pull of temptation. She leaned forward, her face illuminated by the golden light spilling from the desk lamp. Ethan, behind his mask of false sleep, studied her every movement. The weight of his recent betrayal pressed against him like a stone, making this child's reaction feel heavier than any boardroom deal or corporate gamble. For a moment, Amara glanced at her mother, as though waiting for permission. Nia, oblivious to the safe, continued her work. Her back turned, the girl's lips parted in awe, her expression shifting between wonder and hesitation. Ethan's pulse hammered in his ears. If she reached in, if even a single bill slipped into her pocket, it would confirm his deepest fears that honesty was fragile, that trust was a myth, that betrayal lingered even in the most innocent faces. Yet Amara did not move further. Instead, she crouched slightly, studying the stacks with an expression of puzzlement rather than greed. Her little gloves brushed the edge of the safe door, not the money itself, as though tidying the scene rather than violating it. Ethan's mind raced. Was this instinct? Was it training from her mother? Or was it something purer, something uncorrupted by the world? The air inside the room grew dense, heavy with unspoken tension. Outside, the sound of the city seemed to fade, the clip-clop of hooves on cobblestones dissolving into silence, leaving only the distant whisper of the marshes. Inside, every sound felt amplified. The scratch of Nia's cloth against wood, the faint creak of the floorboards under Amara's steps, the steady rhythm of Ethan's controlled breathing. The atmosphere seemed to suspend time itself, as though the universe leaned in to witness the choice of a child. For Nia, the evening was ordinary. Another shift, another set of rooms to leave spotless. For Ethan, it was a crucible, a chance to glimpse truth where lies had always prevailed. For Amara, it was discovery. The first moment she realized that money could command attention. Not through joy, but through silence, weight, and fear. Ethan remained still, his thoughts a storm behind closed eyes. This was more than a test of integrity. It was a search for hope in a world that had taught him cynicism. Charleston's streets outside might carry centuries of scars, but inside this mansion, in this fleeting moment, the decision of a 6-year-old girl had the power to mend or deepen a wound carved by betrayal. Moonlight spread across the study. Through tall windows, Charleston's sky glittered above marsh water and brick roofs. Inside, the mansion held its breath. Ethan stayed on the sofa, eyes shut, body loose, mind alert. He listened for signs. A gloved finger on wood, a whisper that might redirect a life. Nia worked along the far wall, wiping a bookcase with patient strokes. She moved in straight lines, neither rushing nor stalling. She overlooked the safe, left wide by design, or the cash arranged beneath the desk lamp. She did not know the room had become a trial. She focused on tasks learned through labor. Amara stood near the open door, blue gloves bright against the dark interior. She did not grab the money. She studied it. The bills lay like tiles, yet some bundles leaned. A loose strap hung from one roll. The door's edge rested against a scuff on the threshold. The child crouched without crossing the line of the door. 2 fingers lifted the loose strap and tucked it under the band to prevent it from catching. She pressed 2 stacks together with careful nudges at their edges, keeping the surface even. A third row she straightened so the corners met. She smoothed the felt near the hinge where it had bunched. Ethan felt warmth move through him, quiet and new. He had braced for a grab he might forgive yet never forget. He had not prepared for care. He had not planned for a child to guard his property with the care he once expected from a partner. Amara leaned closer, reading the stamp on a paper band. She sounded out numbers under her breath, a soft count that barely disturbed the room. Her voice held focus, not want. She brushed a crumb from the floor so it would not stick to the felt. She drew the door inward a fraction so the hinge would not strain. It held. Nia turned and saw her daughter's posture, Alarm crossed her face. She stepped forward, stopping short of contact. Amara, she said, firm yet calm, do not put your hands inside. That is not ours. She glanced toward the sofa. Ethan did not move. She could not tell if he slept. Amara whispered, I am tidying Mr. Ethan's money. The words floated like a breath. It looked messy. She pulled her hands back and folded them at her waist. I did not take anything. Nia knelt so their eyes met. We do not touch another person's money, she said. We tell them if we see something open. We keep our hands to ourselves. That is how we show respect. Her gaze turned tender then steady. You did not mean harm. Now we step away. The girl nodded. She rose and took 2 steps back. The gloves rubbed. She looked at the neat rows again as if storing an image of order to keep for later. Ethan's chest rose and fell in measured rhythm, yet his heart beat with a pattern he could not ignore. The scene refused his script. He had set a trap for greed and found a child who served order as if it were a duty taught at home. A tug toward trust stirred. Naya guided Amara to the sideboard. Help me with the clothes, she said. We will finish here and move to the hall. She kept her back to the safe, lined up her tools and dusted the frame of a painting. Stars burned above the city. In the old district, alleys bent around courtyards, iron gates shut, vines heavy on brick. Salt air drifted in when the HVAC cycled, carrying a trace of the harbor that seemed to polish every surface with memory. Beyond the seawall, waves tapped stone with a patient rhythm, the same rhythm that guided carriage wheels over cobbles long after the tourists had gone. The sky felt ancient and close tonight. Amara glanced toward the sofa. Is Mr. Ethan sleeping? She murmured. He is resting, Nia answered, tone neutral. We do our work. We leave things better than we found them. We keep our own promise. She handed her daughter a small duster. Corners only, nowhere near the safe. Amara nodded and dusted baseboards in tiny strokes. She hummed a tune from home. Calm returned, though something had shifted. Ethan opened his eyes a sliver. He watched Nia's profile, the alert posture, the quiet lesson delivered without anger. He watched the child attend to small tasks with care drawn from within, not fear. For years he had measured people by risk. Tonight he measured by respect. He closed his eyes, then spoke in a voice rough from quiet. Nia, she froze. Amara straightened. The safe is open, he said, still as before. Thank you for keeping it neat. Nia faced him. Sir, I am sorry, she said. I did not see the door. We do not touch your things. I will close it now and call security to confirm contents. Amara looked between them. I did not take anything, she said again, almost to herself. I know, Ethan replied. He sat up slowly. The lamp threw a clear light across his face. His eyes met the child's first. I saw you push the stacks together. You did not take. You set them straight. He turned to Nia. You warned her with care. Nia held her stance. Rules protect us, she said. I teach that always. He nodded. The room felt larger, as if a wall had moved. He walked to the safe and pressed the door until the latch kissed the frame, leaving a thin slit of light. He did not lock it. Amara lifted her chin. May I fix the strap I tucked, she asked. It might slip again. Nia drew a breath. No, she said, gentle yet firm. We will ask first. Ethan looked at the strap, then at the girl. You noticed details I missed, he said. That helps me. He stepped back. Please step away. I will close it. She obeyed. He shut the door and turned the wheel one notch. He left it there. He did not need sealed steel to feel at ease. He faced the window and let his eyes travel across the stars. Calm spread through him, not because money sat behind metal, but because care had stepped before desire. He turned to them. Thank you for your work, he said. Finish the schedule as planned. I will review procedures later. Nia bowed her head. Yes, sir. Amara slid her hand into her mother's palm. She looked toward the alleys beyond the glass, dark yet safe, old yet new each night. Ethan watched them move toward the door. Words rose before he could stop them. Ever seen a child's honesty shift someone's world? Keep reading to see how. They stepped into the hall. Lights glowed along the rail. Below, the city held steady under stars that had seen fires, floods, weddings, and vows. No record would note. Tonight it held something smaller yet greater. A test passed by a girl with blue gloves, and a mother who taught clear rules, inside a house where wealth had met respect and found it brighter than gold. Victor Langston had never walked a day without privilege, weighing his shoulders like a metal. At 50, he carried arrogance as easily as his tailored suits, his voice sharpened by years of commanding rooms rather than earning respect. His office, perched on the 19th floor of Caldwell Innovations, looked more like a gallery than a workspace. Mahogany desk polished daily, walls lined with portraits of ancestors who had inherited fortune long before Victor first drew breath. He considered himself heir to an empire, though in truth his authority was borrowed from Ethan Caldwell's trust. A trust now stretched thin. When word spread that Nia Okoye, a cleaning employee, had received a modest raise, Victor's lips curled into something between a sneer and a smirk. He had not questioned the figures behind new product launches, nor had he scrutinized executive bonuses double his salary. But the thought of a young immigrant mother earning more than his assumption of her worth ignited a prejudice he rarely bothered to conceal. He caught her in the break room 2 nights later. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly as Nia stacked cups, her uniform pressed though worn from countless washes. Amara stood beside her, balancing on tiptoes to wipe a counter with her little blue gloves. The scene should have been invisible to Victor. Instead, it became an opportunity. Well, Victor began, his voice thick with disdain. What do we have here? Our star custodian training her heir, is that it? His words dripped sarcasm as he adjusted his cufflinks, eyes narrowing on Amara. Tell me, Nia, do the company's hallways sparkle so much brighter after that generous raise Mr. Caldwell handed you? Or is he simply too blind to see where charity belongs? Nia froze. She kept her shoulders squared, refusing to bow before his mockery. I do my work, sir, she replied softly, her Nigerian accent pronounced yet steady. Every space I clean, I leave better than I found it. The raise was not charity, it was recognition for years of service. Victor's laugh was sharp, bouncing off tiled walls. Recognition? You believe scrubbing offices at midnight deserves more pay than loyalty built over decades in this firm? Perhaps Mr. Caldwell's bleeding heart has clouded his judgment. Or perhaps he let his gaze slide toward Amara, who clutched the cloth tighter. You found other ways to earn his favor. Amara blinked, confused, frightened by the venom hidden in his words. Nia's hand reached behind her daughter, steadying her with a gentle touch. Please, she said, her voice firmer now, do not speak like that in front of my child. Victor leaned closer, his breath carrying the bitterness of coffee and contempt. Then keep your child out of my building, he snapped. This is a place for professionals, not playground games. Raises are for leaders, not maids dragging daughters through corridors. Nia stood her ground, though her pulse raced. I have permission, she said. During school breaks, my daughter stays with me. She does no harm. She learns the value of work. Work. Victor spat the word like it was dirt. This is not work. This is charity disguised as employment. Your place, Ms. Okoye, is to clean silently, unseen, uncelebrated. Do not mistake scraps for respect. The silence that followed pressed down like the Charleston heat. Amara tugged at her mother's sleeve, whispering, Mama, let's go. Her small voice cracked. From his mansion office across town, Ethan Caldwell watched the exchange on a live feed. The camera, installed for routine security, now transmitted cruelty in real time. He had left the feed running after his test with the safe, curiosity urging him to observe how Nia and Amara moved through the building. What he saw instead twisted his chest with fury. His jaw clenched as Victor's prejudice spilled unchecked, his words cutting like glass. Later that evening, Nia carried a cart through a quiet hallway, Amara walking beside her with tired eyes. The corridor stretched long, its polished floor reflecting dim lights overhead. Shadows clung to the corners, the air heavy with humidity seeping in through the vents. The silence broke when Victor appeared again, stepping out from his office like a hunter from cover. Still here? He said, blocking their path. His smile was thin, dangerous. I suppose the pay increase comes with extra hours, or perhaps you enjoy parading your daughter around empty halls, flaunting your special status. Nia stiffened. We are finishing our route, she replied evenly. She moved the cart forward, but Victor shifted, obstructing the way. His presence loomed larger than the hallway itself. Amara shrank against her mother's side. Victor leaned down, voice low, words sharp. Tell me, Nia, what lesson do you think she learns here? Does bending over floors earn a reward? Does being visible win affection? Be careful. Teaching a child illusions can end poorly. His eyes narrowed. And if Mr. Caldwell continues indulging you, others may start asking what you've done to deserve it. Questions can be dangerous. Amara whimpered, her gloved hand gripping her mother's arm. Mama, I want to go home, she whispered. Her wide eyes glistened with fear she could not hide. Nia raised her chin, summoning courage from the depths of exhaustion. My daughter learns dignity, she said. She learns that honest work, no matter how small, is honorable. She learns that cruelty says more about the speaker than the target. Her voice did not waver. Now step aside. For a moment, Victor's smirk faltered. Then he stepped back, hands raised in mock surrender. Careful, Miss Okoye, he said, his tone smooth with menace. You may believe you are safe under Mr. Caldwell's shadow, but shadows shift. When they move, the ones beneath them are left exposed. He turned and walked away, the sound of his shoes echoing down the hall. Nia held Amara close, her heart pounding, her mind torn between fear and defiance. She guided her daughter to the elevator, whispering comfort in soft tones until the doors closed between them and the threat. In his mansion, Ethan rose from the sofa. His eyes blazed as he replayed Victor's words, each syllable laced with prejudice. Rage pulsed through him, not only as an employer, but as a man who had seen loyalty mocked, innocence frightened, and dignity challenged. He gripped the edge of his desk until his knuckles whitened. Victor Langston had crossed a line not measured by money or status, but by humanity. Outside, Charleston simmered in the summer night. Oak-lined streets glistened under lanterns, humidity clinging to every surface. Spanish moss swayed like ghostly fingers, whispering secrets through branches older than memory. The city, steeped in history both proud and painful, seemed to echo Ethan's fury. The quiet alleys, the heavy air, the pulse of cicadas, all bore witness to the clash unfolding behind office walls. Ethan's reflection stared back from the window, stern and unyielding. He knew decisions awaited. He had tested honesty and found hope in a child's hands. Now he faced cruelty that threatened to poison that hope. His jaw set. The cameras had given him the truth. The question was what to do with it. Can one man's cruelty be stopped? The truth awaits. Charleston's waterfront glowed under moonlight, its rippling waters reflecting streaks of silver across the harbor. Street lamps lined the promenade, casting halos over oak benches, their light distorted by humid air that hung heavy in the night. Ethan Caldwell stood at the edge, hands in pockets, suit jacket open to the coastal breeze. His fury burned beneath a calm posture, every breath sharp as he replayed Victor Langston's venomous words through his mind. Trust had already been broken once, but Victor's cruelty had crossed into something intolerable. Integrity had to be defended. He turned when footsteps approached. Marcus Lee emerged from the shadows, his stride steady, posture erect, eyes sharp with the focus of a man who had spent decades piecing together truths others tried to bury. Former FBI, now independent, Marcus carried himself without need for introductions. At 48, his lean frame and weathered face spoke of long nights and countless interrogations. He extended a hand, grip firm, gaze unflinching. "Ethan," Marcus said, voice low, direct. "I got your message. You said this was urgent." "It is," Ethan replied. "One of my own has turned predator. He's attacking the people who trust me most. He hides behind privilege, but I've seen the cameras. I need him exposed, not just fired. I want evidence so strong it cannot be denied." Marcus tilted his head. "Victor Langston?" Ethan nodded. "You've heard the name. Too many times," Marcus muttered. "Corporate circles talk. He's known for pressuring minority staff, cornering them with subtle threats, never enough to trigger lawsuits but enough to break spirits. I pulled files before I came. Complaints are buried under paperwork. HR brushed them aside. He thrives on intimidation." Ethan's jaw tightened. "I cannot allow that here. He mocked a child in my building. He questioned her mother's right to work with dignity. This is not business. This is human." Marcus studied him, then gave a short nod. "You don't want removal. You want dismantling." "Yes," Ethan said, voice cold. "I want a record no board, no journalist, no court could ignore. I want his legacy to end under the weight of his own cruelty." Marcus stepped closer, lowering his voice as the tide lapped against the stone. "Then we set a trap. We collect his words, not just once, but over time. We let him reveal himself." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Recordings." "Precisely," Marcus said. "Discreet microphones, hidden where he feels most untouchable. Hallways, conference rooms, elevators, places where arrogance loosens his tongue." He paused. "The trick is to cover. If he suspects, he'll go silent." Ethan's mind turned, gears aligning, security upgrades. "We've been planning enhancements, cameras, alarms, and fire safety sensors. If microphones arrive with those, no one questions them." Marcus's lips curved in the faintest smile. "Smart. We'll disguise every device as part of routine modernization. By the time he notices, his words will already damn him." The two men walked along the waterfront, passing oak trees whose leaves whispered under the night air. Across the water, church steeples pierced the skyline, history standing tall against the dark. Ethan looked at them, drawing strength from permanence. This was no fleeting impulse. It was justice taking root. "Tell me everything you found," Ethan said. Marcus pulled a tablet from his satchel, the screen glowing against the night. Pages of reports scrolled with practice swipes. 5 complaints over 15 years, he explained, all filed by employees of color. Words like harassment, demeaning remarks, and intimidation. None escalated, always dismissed as misunderstandings. Yet patterns emerge. He singles out women, especially single mothers. He questions promotions, mocks accents, and belittles backgrounds. Marcus looked up. "It's systemic." Ethan absorbed every word, fury solidifying into resolve. "Then we give those voices weight. We don't just expose him for what he says now. We resurrect his record. Past meets present." Marcus's nod carried approval. "It will require patience. He'll slip. His arrogance is too great. All we need is time." The next week, new security teams entered Caldwell Innovations. Workers in uniforms carried sleek black cases, installing panels and ceilings, adjusting fixtures, rewiring connections. Employees moved aside, assuming it was routine maintenance. They noticed microphones no more than they noticed light bulbs. Victor himself signed off on updates, oblivious to the trap forming around him. Ethan monitored every step from his mansion. Screens filled his study, each camera now enhanced by discrete audio streams. At night, he sat alone, watching footage, listening to silence, waiting for arrogance to speak. Patience gnawed at him, but Marcus's calm words echoed. "He will slip." Days passed before the first strike. In a boardroom, Victor leaned against the table, voice dripping condescension. "Diversity hires," he muttered, "always looking for handouts. Raise one, they all expect more. This company wasn't built on pity. It was built on power. Laughter followed, hollow from two junior managers, too timid to oppose him. The microphone caught every syllable. Marcus replayed the clip in Ethan's office. Clear, sharp, and damning, he said. But we gather more. One insult is a headline. A pattern is a case. So they waited, week by week, each recording adding weight. Victor berated a receptionist for her accent. He questioned a developer's degree because it came from abroad. He mocked janitorial staff, suggesting their children should avoid education beyond cleaning. Each phrase was a nail. Together they built a coffin. Ethan felt the fire inside shift. Rage gave way to strategy. Fury transformed into purpose. He no longer watched merely as an employer, but as a guardian. The mansion's study became a command center, justice taking shape under oak beams. Nights blurred into mornings, but resolve never dimmed. Charleston mirrored the tension. Waterfront bars pulsed with jazz, but alleys stayed quiet, shadows long under lanterns. The air was thick, every breath heavy, as if the city itself braced for revelation. Spanish moss swayed like silent witnesses, ancient oaks lining streets where carriages once rolled, now carrying whispers of a storm about to break. In a late-night call, Marcus leaned forward over the table. "We have enough," he said. "Hours of proof, words that cut, actions that threaten, history to connect. The net is ready." Ethan looked at the screens, Victor's face frozen mid-sneer. "Then we move soon," he said. His tone carried certainty, not in anger, but in justice. Marcus's eyes glinted. "Exactly. Justice is brewing. Read on to witness its rise." The harbor outside flickered with reflections of moonlight. Ships drifted against the tide, horns distant, stars sharp above. Ethan stood at the window, fists unclenching. He thought of Naya's steady resolve, of Amara's gloved hands straightening stacks, of dignity preserved against cruelty. He thought of betrayal past, and truth present, and for the first time in months, he felt the future bend toward hope. Victor Langston moved like a man rehearsing triumph. The corporate corridors gleamed under low lights, each polished surface reflecting his angular frame. In his pocket sat a velvet box, sleek and unmarked, containing a diamond ring worth $10,000. It had not been purchased with sentiment or intention. It had been acquired for one purpose only: deception. He timed the act carefully. The building was quiet, offices cleared, only night staff moving through routines. Security cameras swiveled without suspicion, but Victor knew where their blind spots lay. At least he thought he did. What he failed to see were the hidden microphones, the upgrades Ethan Caldwell had orchestrated. Every word, every move, every shift of fabric against metal would be preserved. Nia pushed her cart slowly along the hall, Amara beside her, clutching a cloth with small blue gloves. The air was heavy, humming with the mechanical breath of the building. She hummed softly, a tune from home, soothing her daughter against the monotony of long nights. Victor approached, expression smooth. "Evening, Miss Okoye," he said. His tone dripped with mock civility. "Still polishing floors, even after such a generous raise? Dedication, I suppose." Nia nodded politely, refusing provocation. "I do my work," she said simply. His smile tightened. He waited until she bent to adjust a bucket's wheel. With a quick glance down the corridor, he opened the velvet box and slid the ring into the folds of a rag resting on her cart. His hand moved swiftly, precisely, like a magician concealing a trick. Then he straightened, voice casual. "Well, carry on." He walked away, the satisfaction of deceit pulling his lips upward. From a control room across town, Ethan and Marcus watched. The hidden microphone captured the faint click of the box, the muted rustle of fabric as metal met cloth. Marcus leaned closer to the monitor. "Got him," he said, clear as day. Ethan's eyes narrowed. "He thinks shadows protect him. Tonight they betray him." Moments later, Victor returned, accompanied by two uniformed guards. His steps were theatrical, his words sharp. "There," he declared, pointing at Naya's cart. "Check it. I saw her lingering where she shouldn't. I have reason to believe she's stolen company property." Naya froze, confusion flooding her face. "What?" she asked. Her accent thickened under strain. "I have taken nothing." Victor folded his arms. "Search it." The guards hesitated, uncomfortable. They knew Naya's reputation, 2 years of spotless service. Still, the authority pressed. One stepped forward, lifting rags from the cart. Within seconds, his hand struck velvet. The box opened, the diamond catching light like fire. Gasps filled the corridor. Amara's eyes widened, her small body trembling. "Mama," she whispered. Naya's breath caught, disbelief crushing her chest. "That is not mine," she cried. "I have never seen it." Victor's voice boomed with false indignation. "A $10,000 ring, hidden in her cart. What more proof do we need? Thieves wear many faces. Trust them, and they rob you blind." Amara clung to her mother's leg, tears welling. "Mama, no," she whispered, voice breaking. "You didn't." The guards looked uneasy, yet Victor's authority loomed. He gestured broadly. "Escort her to security. Mr. Caldwell will decide, but I won't have criminals in this building." Ethan stepped from the shadows at the end of the hall, Voice sharp. Enough. All heads turned. His presence carried weight, his expression hard. Beside him, Marcus held a tablet, screens glowing with footage. Victor stammered, then recovered. Ethan, perfect timing. We've caught her red-handed. Look at the evidence yourself. Ethan advanced, slow, deliberate. His gaze cut through Victor. Evidence? His tone was cold. You mean the evidence you planted? Victor faltered. Planted? What nonsense. Marcus tapped the tablet, the screen lit with video, Victor's hand sliding the box into the cart, the velvet glinting under dim light. The sound of fabric shifting filled the corridor. His own voice echoed. Well, carry on. The guards stiffened, their eyes widened as the truth struck. Ethan's words sliced the silence. Every second recorded, every sound preserved. You tried to frame an innocent woman. You terrified her child. You dared stain this company with lies. Nia held Amara close, tears streaming, relief mixed with shock, her chest rising in quick breaths. You see, she whispered, I told you. Victor's face flushed crimson. This is manipulation, he spat. Fabricated footage, doctored audio. You trust machines over men. Ethan's jaw tightened. I trust truth over arrogance. And tonight, truth speaks louder than you ever could. The guards stepped back from Nia, shame clear in their eyes. One turned to her, voice soft. I'm sorry. Amara buried her face against her mother, sobbing quietly. Nia stroked her hair, whispering comfort though her own hands shook. Ethan moved closer to Victor, voice low but dangerous. You've humiliated yourself. You tried to destroy her dignity to preserve your pride. But pride has no shield against proof. Victor glared, desperation flaring. You think this ends me? You think one clip erases decades? Marcus lifted the tablet higher, displaying folders of recordings. Not one clip, he said. Dozens. Weeks of evidence. Every insult, every threat, every act of cruelty documented. The corridor seemed to shrink, walls closing in around Victor. His breath quickened, arrogance fraying. Outside, Charleston breathed heavy. Gaslit streets flickered as lamps swayed, shadows spilling across old brick facades. Oak trees lined narrow alleys, branches heavy with moss, their silence echoing the tension within the building. The city's historic charm seemed to stand as witness, its past marked by trials, its present demanding truth. Ethan's voice carried finality. You are finished here. He turned to the guards. Escort him out, effective immediately. Victor lunged, words bitter. You'll regret this, Caldwell. You think you can strip me of everything. I'll fight you. I'll fight evidence. Ethan snapped. Fight your own voice. He leaned closer, eyes blazing. You built walls of privilege, Victor. Tonight they crumble, and I will watch them fall. The guards seized Victor's arms, steering him toward the elevator. He struggled, curses spilling, but resistance only underscored his downfall. Nia sank against the wall. Amara still pressed to her side. Ethan approached gently now, tone softening. You're safe, he told her. The truth is clear. No one will touch you again. Nia met his eyes, gratitude breaking through fear. Thank you, she whispered, for believing. Ethan shook his head. Not belief, proof. You lived honestly. The evidence only showed the world what I already saw. Amara peeked up, cheeks wet, voice small. Mr. Ethan, will he come back? Ethan knelt, meeting her gaze. No, he said firmly. He won't hurt you or your mother again. Marcus stepped forward, tablet tucked under his arm. The recordings are secure, he said. Tomorrow the board will see. Journalists will follow. His name will carry his own shame. Ethan rose, looking out a window where the city glimmered under the night's watch. Let it. This house, this company, this family, none will carry his stain. The silence that followed carried weight, but not fear. Relief seeped into the air, fragile yet growing. Outside, the gaslit streets flickered brighter, as though history itself approved. Old bricks whispered stories of justice, long fought for, now renewed in a hallway where arrogance had been caught and innocence preserved. The night closed with dignity intact, proof unshakable, and a villain dragged into light. Charleston's morning unfolded beneath a sky the color of burnished copper. Humidity wrapped the air thickly, pressing against skin, clinging to every breath. The streets pulsed with life, vendors unloading carts of fruit near the market, church bells tolling in the distance, the faint rhythm of jazz spilling from a cafe already awake. The city's vibrant culture carried a weighty backdrop as though history itself leaned in to witness what was about to unfold. Inside the marble atrium of Caldwell Innovations, rows of cameras stood ready. Journalists filled seats, microphones raised, notebooks open. Anticipation buzzed like static, the room charged with the knowledge that something significant was coming. Ethan Caldwell stepped onto the stage, his presence steady, his gaze calm yet unyielding. At 45, he had weathered storms both personal and professional, but none as defining as the one he now chose to unleash. Behind him, a large screen flickered to life. Marcus Lee stood at the side, tablet in hand, the quiet architect of the case. In the first row, Nia sat with Amara on her lap. The child wore her familiar blue gloves, fingers curled around her mother's hand. Nia's posture was upright, though her eyes betrayed fatigue and uncertainty. Amara leaned close, whispering softly, her small voice carrying the comfort her mother desperately needed. Ethan began, his voice carried across the atrium, deep and deliberate. For 2 decades, this company has stood on the values of innovation, integrity, and respect. These values are not decorations on walls. They are promises to people, promises we keep. Today, I must reveal a betrayal of those promises. Whispers rippled through the room. Cameras zoomed closer. Ethan continued, Victor Langston, vice president of this company, has engaged in conduct that violates not only our standards, but the basic principles of human dignity. His prejudice has been hidden behind authority for 15 years. Today, truth steps into the light. He gestured toward the screen. Images appeared, screenshots of social media posts, each stamped with dates, each marked with Victor's name. Words filled with venom scrolled across the display, mocking immigrants, ridiculing accents, questioning the worth of employees of color. Posts dripped with arrogance disguised as opinion. The journalist leaned forward, pens scratching furiously. Gasps broke the silence as slurs appeared in bold. Ethan's voice never wavered. These are not isolated words. They are reflections of belief, a belief that sought to diminish others, belief that spread into actions within these halls. Marcus tapped his tablet. The screen shifted. Video filled the space. Victor's voice, sharp and cruel, captured by the hidden microphones. Diversity hires, he sneered in one clip, always begging for more. In another, accents belong in kitchens, not boardrooms. Laughter followed his remarks, hollow echoes of fear rather than agreement. Journalists murmured, some shaking their heads, others whispering into recorders. The evidence was undeniable. Victor's voice, his own words, condemned him. Ethan stepped forward. This is not about a single insult. This is a pattern. 15 years of dismissing talent, undermining dignity, and exploiting silence. Complaints buried, victims ignored. Until now, the atrium's air grew heavy, silence thick as stone. Then the doors at the back swung open. Victor entered, flanked by his attorney, face red, jaw tight. He tried to stride with confidence, but the weight of evidence pulled at every step. Cameras swiveled toward him, flashes bursting. Lies, Victor shouted, his voice cracking. Fabrications. You've doctored every file, twisted every word. This is slander. Ethan turned slowly, his expression controlled. Is this your voice? He signaled Marcus, who replayed another clip. Victor's laughter filled the room, followed by words unmistakable. She should stick to cleaning. That's all she's fit for. The attorney whispered urgently, tugging Victor's sleeve, but Victor shook him off. Rage overtook caution. You're destroying me because I dared to question your decisions. This is nothing but revenge, Caldwell. You can't erase me with noise. Ethan's gaze hardened. Not noise, truth. He motioned again, and the screen filled with testimony, statements from employees who had once filed complaints. Their words appeared across the display. He mocked my accent. He told me I'd never be promoted because of where I was from. He said raising children as a single mother meant I had no future. Each line glowed under the lights, undeniable in its weight. Nia's hand trembled, but Amara leaned against her, whispering, Mama, it's over. He can't hurt us now. The child's innocence, her soft reassurance, steadied her mother's spirit more than any speech could. Tears welled in Nia's eyes, yet pride straightened her back. Journalists fired questions. Mr. Caldwell, will he face charges? How long did you know? What reforms will follow? Cameras flashed relentlessly, documenting the downfall of a man who once believed himself untouchable. Victor's face twisted, fury unraveling into desperation. This is a witch hunt, he screamed. You think this city cares about your performance of virtue? Charleston was built by men like me. Ethan's reply cut like steel. Charleston was built by resilience, not arrogance. By hands that worked through oppression, not by privilege that mocked them. This city carries scars, but it also carries hope. And in this company, hope will prevail. The room erupted with applause, sharp, unrestrained, rising like thunder. Journalists stood recording every detail. Victor's attorney tugged again, but the disgraced executive pulled away. His once commanding posture collapsed into fragments of pride. Ethan raised his hand, silencing the room. His voice lowered, solemn yet powerful. What happens when truth prevails? The fallout will inspire you, because dignity once defended cannot be erased. He turned toward Nia and Amara. Their eyes met. In that glance lay recognition, not between billionaire and employee, but between human beings bound by shared values. Amara squeezed her mother's hand, her small blue gloves a symbol of innocence that had forced truth into daylight. Outside, Charleston pulsed under heavy warmth. Spanish moss swayed above oak-lined avenues, jazz spilled into cobblestone alleys, and vendors called across markets filled with color and sound. The city, alive with culture, carried the echo of what had just unfolded. Justice declared, prejudice exposed, and hope reborn in the eyes of those who had once been silenced. Victor Langston was led from the atrium, cameras chasing, reporters shouting questions he could no longer escape. His face, once smug with entitlement, now looked haunted, trapped in the very spotlight he once commanded. His fall was complete, recorded forever in headlines that would ripple far beyond Charleston streets. Ethan stepped from the podium, the applause still echoing. Marcus joined him, nodding with quiet satisfaction. "It's done," Marcus said. Ethan exhaled, tension leaving his shoulders. "It's only beginning," he replied. "We rebuild now on truth." Nia stood, Amara's hand in hers. As they approached, Ethan bent slightly, his tone gentle. "You showed strength I cannot measure," he told Nia. Her eyes softened. "You gave us proof when no one else would." Amara looked up, her voice bright despite exhaustion. "We made it better, Mr. Ethan, right?" He smiled faintly. "Yes, Amara, you made it better." The three of them stood together in the heavy Charleston air, while beyond the glass atrium, the city's vibrant culture carried on. Proof that even in a place scarred by history, moments of courage could redraw the future. The courthouse steps overflowed with noise as Victor Langston was led away in handcuffs. Flashbulbs cracked like thunder. Reporters shouted questions, and the crowd pressed forward to capture the image of a man once untouchable, now reduced to disgrace. His head remained bowed, shoulders tight, a shadow of arrogance still clinging, though pride had collapsed entirely. The charges were clear: conspiracy to defame, harassment, and systematic discrimination. The law had finally reached him. Ethan Caldwell stood a short distance away, his expression measured. Cameras caught him too, but his attention rested not on journalists nor on Victor's downfall, but on the woman and child standing quietly at his side. Naya held Amara's hand, the girl's tiny blue gloves contrasting against her mother's darker skin. They had been cleared fully, publicly, undeniably. Their dignity was intact, their names vindicated. Inside the courthouse, statements had been read. The recordings gathered by Marcus Lee had played in front of jurors, each word Victor spoke condemning him further. His attorney's objections crumbled under the weight of truth. Social media posts, witness accounts, and financial trails proving manipulation, all presented with precision. By the time the verdict rang, the city had already shifted. Justice was no longer a question but a fact. Victor's family, pillars of Charleston's old wealth, released their statement within hours. They disowned him, calling his actions shameful, his views unrepresentative. His shares in Caldwell Innovations were sold back to the company at a fraction of their value. Generations of inherited influence dissolved in a single day. Charleston itself seemed to breathe differently that afternoon. The sun spilled golden light across the marshes, their tall grasses swaying in rhythm with a warm breeze. Boats skimmed the harbor, their sails white against a brilliant sky. Along King Street, banners unfurled for the annual festival. Bright colors strung across lampposts, music echoing from stages, children dancing with painted faces. Joy filled the air unbothered by humidity, carried instead by resilience. The city's scars had always been deep, but moments like this proved healing could follow hurt. Naya walked beside Ethan through the courthouse plaza, Amara skipping lightly between them, innocence restored. Her laughter rang like bells, drawing smiles from strangers. Naya's eyes lifted to Ethan's, gratitude written in every glance. "You stood for us when no one else would," she said. "We will not forget." Ethan shook his head. "You stood for yourself. I only gave truth a stage." He looked at Amara, her gloves smudged from clapping during the festival parade earlier. "And I will protect her," he added, voice steady. "She will never fear shadows in these halls again." Amara looked up, curious. "Even when I'm grown?" "Especially then," Ethan replied. His words carried weight beyond comfort. They carried promise. That evening, celebrations stretched across the city. Drums echoed through cobblestone alleys, fireworks painted the horizon, and food stalls brimmed with spices and flavor. Families gathered on blankets near the marsh, children chasing each other as fiddles played. The warm, heavy air pulsed with rhythm, every street alive with Charleston's culture. African drums blending with bluegrass, gospel harmonies rising above chatter. It was a city refusing silence, choosing joy. Naya stood near the waterfront, with Amara perched on her hip. Lanterns floated upward, glowing against the dusk, carrying written wishes from festival goers. Amara scribbled on her paper, "Mama safe. Mr. Ethan is happy." She tied it carefully, released it, and watched as the lantern drifted into the sky. Her smile stretched wide, brighter than any firework. Ethan observed from a few feet away, Marcus at his side. The investigator, always stoic, allowed a rare smile. "You've done more than protect your company," Marcus said. "You've shifted its soul." Ethan nodded. Victor tried to poison it, but truth rebuilt it stronger. He paused, watching Naya laugh as Amara tugged at her dress. "Sometimes it takes innocence to remind us what matters." News spread quickly. Caldwell Innovations announced reforms, stronger HR oversight, diversity initiatives, and scholarship programs for underrepresented students. The company became a model of transformation, headlines praising its stance. Awards soon followed, but Ethan cared little for recognition. His gaze stayed fixed on the family whose resilience had sparked the change. Victor, meanwhile, sat in a county cell, his influence stripped. His name, once spoken with deference, now trended online as a cautionary tale. Journalists unearthed more stories long buried of insults and schemes. His downfall was not quiet, it was complete. Weeks later, Charleston celebrated another festival, this one honoring history and resilience. Nia attended not as an anonymous worker, but as a guest of honor, her name recognized by many. She wore a simple dress, pride in her bearing, her daughter skipping along cobblestone paths lined with oak trees. Vendors handed Amara sweets, musicians waved mid-song, and neighbors greeted them with warmth. For the first time in years, Nia felt visible not as a target, but as a victor. Ethan joined them, blending into the crowd, though whispers followed his presence. He ignored them, focusing instead on the bond between mother and daughter, a bond that had survived intimidation and emerged unbreakable. At one moment, Amara slipped from her mother's hand and ran toward him, hugging his leg. He lifted her gently, her gloves brushing his cheek. "You kept us safe," she whispered. Ethan's throat tightened. "You kept yourself safe," he corrected softly. "You reminded me what honesty looks like." As the sun dipped, marshes gleamed orange and gold. Birds lifted in flocks, sweeping across water like brushstrokes of freedom. Charleston's skyline glowed, steeples catching last light, streets alive with music and laughter. The city, once backdrop to cruelty, now frames renewal. Victor's name faded into silence. His power dissolved, his legacy erased by truth. Nia's dignity stood intact, her path opening toward new possibilities. Amara's innocence had not been broken but strengthened, her laughter carrying across marsh winds like a song. Ethan, scarred by betrayal, yet healed by honesty, vowed to carry their protection as more than duty. It was purpose. Justice had prevailed, not with noise alone but with clarity. Moral victory resonated louder than wealth, louder than power. It was Charleston's triumph carried in its air, sung in its festivals, reflected in its marshes. And as lanterns rose once more, drifting into a sky heavy with history yet open to hope, Ethan whispered a promise to himself, to Nia, to Amara, and to the city that bore witness. This is how legacies are rewritten. 6 months passed, yet Charleston's rhythm remained the same. Slow tides rolling against stone embankments, church bells tolling across oak-lined streets, and the scent of jasmine drifting through humid air. Still, for those whose lives had been transformed, every sound and every color seemed brighter. The scars of betrayal had healed, replaced by victories born of truth. At Caldwell Innovations, change was not whispered, it was lived. Hallways once weighed down by silent prejudice now carried the hum of possibility. Employees walked with renewed confidence, knowing integrity had triumphed. In the executive wing, Nia Okoye stepped into her new office, her name etched proudly on the glass door, Director of Human Resources. She smoothed her blazer, the first tailored suit she had ever owned, and placed a family photo on her desk, herself smiling, with Amara beaming beside her. Nia had not abandoned her education. She re-enrolled in night classes, pursuing the business degree she once feared she would never complete. Now her role allowed her to merge theory with practice, crafting policies to protect every employee from the shadows she once endured. Each decision carried weight, but she approached them with quiet resilience. She was no longer invisible, she was a leader. Down the street, Amara bounded up the steps of Charleston Preparatory Academy, her uniform neat, her backpack swinging. At only 7, she spoke with determination that startled even her teachers. One day she announced during career day, "I will be a lawyer. I will make sure no one loses because of unfair rules." Her classmates listened, wide-eyed, while her teacher smiled knowingly. Amara's dream was not a fantasy, it was a legacy, born from nights she watched her mother stand tall against cruelty. The little blue gloves she once wore now rested in a keepsake box at home, reminders of innocence that helped spark change. Ethan Caldwell watched both journeys with pride. His company had not only recovered from scandal, but had been reborn. National publications hailed Caldwell Innovations as a model of transformation, praising its reforms and its bold stance against discrimination. Diversity councils recognized its efforts, awarding Ethan and his team with honors that now filled a wall in the lobby. Yet when journalists asked him what inspired the shift, he never credited himself. His answer remained the same. A child's honesty reminded us what mattered. Awards glittered, profits rose, but what endured was trust, earned, not assumed. Employees spoke of him not only as a leader, but as a man who listened. He found himself invited into conversations he once overlooked, discovering cultures and stories he had ignored while chasing numbers. The betrayal that once hardened him now guided him toward empathy. His legacy no longer rested in wealth but in the dignity restored within his halls. Far from marble offices and golden plaques, Victor Langston's story unraveled in silence. His arrest and conviction had stripped him of title, wealth, and reputation. The board had expelled him, his shares bought at a fraction of their worth, his family severing ties with a statement cold and final. Now he drifted from one odd job to another, stocking shelves at night, sweeping parking lots at dawn, repairing fences under the summer sun. His face, once a symbol of privilege, now carried the weight of scorn. Online, his past never vanished. Articles recirculated, recordings resurfaced, and social media posts immortalized his prejudice. Wherever he went, whispers followed. That's him. That's the man who mocked a child. That's the one who lost everything. Victor could not escape his own words. They lived louder than his protests, echoing through every attempt to rebuild. For him, the city's charm had become a reminder of what dignity denied could cost. Meanwhile, Charleston thrived. Festivals bloomed with energy. Streets lined with banners, drums echoing against brick facades, dancers filling squares with color and rhythm. Food stalls carried the spice of Gullah cuisine, blending heritage with celebration. Families gathered by the marsh, watching fireworks shimmer across water tinted by sunset. The city's culture, resilient and vibrant, mirrored the story that had unfolded within its walls. Hardship confronted, injustice exposed, and hope reborn. One evening, as the sun sank low, the marshes glowed gold. Ethan, Naya, and Amara stood on a boardwalk overlooking the water. Spanish moss swayed above them, the air warm but gentle. Amara leaned against the railing, pointing to the horizon. "It looks like the sky is wearing a crown," she said. Her mother smiled, brushing hair from her daughter's forehead. Ethan listened, his heart lighter than it had been in years. "The world is better when we notice its crowns," he said, "and when we protect those who deserve them." Naya looked at him, gratitude deep in her eyes. "You gave us safety," she whispered. "No," Ethan replied. "You gave me courage. Amara gave me the truth. I only followed where honesty led." They stood in silence, watching the light fade into deep orange, the city glowing in the distance with lanterns and laughter. The courthouse where justice was declared stood tall among church steeples, a reminder that even ancient streets could host new beginnings. For Naya, the journey was no longer about survival but growth. For Amara, dreams stretched beyond classrooms into a future she would claim with determination. For Ethan, purpose replaced suspicion, and trust returned in ways wealth could never buy. And for Victor, ruin lingered as the consequence of cruelty, an unshakable lesson etched into the city's memory. Charleston's charm carried all of it. The past, the pain, the triumph woven into golden sunsets and cobblestone echoes. It was a city that endured, a city that reminded all who lived within it that dignity could not be silenced forever. And as lanterns rose once more, drifting into twilight skies, Ethan's voice carried softly, a vow for those who listened. We are stronger when we choose kindness. Subscribe now for more stories of justice and kindness that prove doing good changes everything.